Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Iran could have enough uranium for a nuclear bomb in 2 months. According to a report by the Institute for Science and International Security, Iran is just a few months away from producing the 25 kilograms of enriched uranium needed for a nuclear weapon. The report noted that the hardline Islamic Republic has been frantically adding centrifuges and equipment to increase uranium enrichment. The report explained that the Fordo underground nuclear facility has 800 centrifuges producing uranium enriched to 20% purity. There are 2,000 more machines installed, but not yet operational at the site. Ali Hainoan, former IAEA deputy director in charge of the Iran file, said that when all of the centrifuges at Fordo are operational, the site will be producing double the amount of uranium enriched to 20% each month. This means that at the Fordo facility alone, the Islamic Republic could produce enough uranium to make at least 2 nuclear bombs each month.
An unmanned aerial vehicle violated Israeli airspace last week. According to the IDF, the UAV was detected as it entered Israeli skies from the Mediterranean Sea after flying from the west to the east over the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Air Force scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets, which flew alongside the drone until it was over a large open area and then shot it down. Security forces gathered debris for analysis and released a statement saying that it appeared that the aircraft had been sent on an intelligence-gathering mission and was not equipped with explosives. Evidence indicates that the drone may have been collecting information for Iran after having been deployed by its proxy, the Hezbollah terror organization based in Lebanon. Hezbollah has launched several UAVs into Israel in recent years, most notably during the Israeli-Lebanon War of 2006, when it flew an Iranian-made drone into Israel capable of carrying explosives. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel will continue to protect the land, sea, and air borders on behalf of the nation's citizens. And according to Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, Israeli leaders view the incident with great severity and are gravely considering an appropriate response.
U.S. presidential candidate Mitt Romney has blamed Barack Obama for allowing the risk of conflict in the Middle East to increase during his presidency. Speaking to cadets at the Virginia Military Institute, Romney said the president explicitly stated that his goal was to put daylight between the United States and Israel, and he has succeeded. Romney added that this is a dangerous situation that has set back the hope of peace in the Middle East and emboldened our mutual adversaries, especially Iran. He went on to say that the relationship between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel, our closest ally in the region, has suffered great strains. The GOP hopeful then pledged to restore relations with Israel and to increase military coordination between the two countries. He said, "I will reaffirm our historic ties to Israel and our abiding commitment to its security. The world must never see daylight between our two nations."
A group of international politicians visiting Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacles penned a resolution asserting Israel's right to preemptively strike Iran. Last week, Israel Now News reported that 24 legislators from 17 countries attended the Israel Allies Caucus Foundation Chairman's Conference, where they discussed methods to pressure their home governments to sever diplomatic ties with the hardline Islamic Republic over its nuclear program. The declaration details the inalienable right of the Israeli people to dwell in their historic homeland, including Judea and Samaria, where there has been a continual Jewish presence for 3,000 years. The resolution also recognized Jerusalem as the eternal, undivided capital of Israel and the Jewish people.
Residents of southern Israel were barraged with rocket fire during Simchat Torah celebrations last week. The Hamas rulers in the Gaza Strip claimed responsibility for the mortar fire, which had Israelis running for bomb shelters rather than dancing with the Torah. One rocket struck a synagogue before morning prayers began, and another hit the animal corner of a kibbutz. Several goats were killed, and one resident of the kibbutz said that it was a real miracle that the bombing happened on a holiday. On a normal day, the animal corner is packed with children at that hour, but all of the children were home with their families celebrating Simchat Torah. A total of 55 rockets were fired into Israel in a 24-hour period.
After a Syrian rocket landed in Turkey last week, Ankara deemed the incident an act of war, and the two nations exchanged fire for 6 days. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan called on the citizens of Turkey to prepare for the outbreak of war, saying that they must be ready at any moment. Turkish government spokesman Bülent Arınç declared that Ankara will immediately retaliate for every attack against the nation targeting its sovereignty, security of life and property. NATO ambassadors held an emergency meeting over the situation in its member state and announced their support of Turkey's response against the forces of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. NATO Secretary General Anders Rasmussen told reporters that the organization has all necessary plans in place to protect and defend Turkey.
The Palestinians remain committed to an armed struggle with Israel. This coming from a top Fatah official and the former Palestinian Authority governor of Nablus. In an interview with a Palestinian media outlet, Mahmoud Alul from the Fatah Central Committee said that the Palestinians have agreed to launch a popular resistance against occupation, but no one has dropped the idea of armed resistance. He said that the Palestinian people remain focused on the goals of establishing an independent state within the pre-1967 borders, which Israel views as being indefensible. He insisted that Jerusalem must be liberated from the Zionists and that Israeli settlements must be completely removed. Alul went on to say that the current Palestinian administration has betrayed the Palestinian people by offering them hopes of a state by negotiating with the enemy, Israel.
Jews in France have become increasingly concerned over their safety after a recent series of anti-Semitic incidents. Blank gunshots were fired at a synagogue last week, and last month a grenade was thrown at a kosher grocery store. An attack on a Jewish school in Toulouse last spring killed 3 young children and 1 teacher. Threats against the Jewish community of France are on the rise, and French investigators say that they suspect Muslim extremists are behind the spate of attacks. According to the nation's Minister of the Interior, the terror cells originate in France, and newly elected French President François Hollande has vowed to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism. Saying that no act of anti-Jewish behavior will be condoned, he promised that all violations will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Last week, French security forces raided a suspected network of Muslim extremists, killing the 33-year-old alleged leader of one cell who fired on police. After arresting 11 men suspected of involvement, they also discovered Islamist literature and a list of Jewish organizations in the Paris area. And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and I'm here in Jerusalem in a beautiful day on our rooftop studio. Our guest today is Congressman Trent Franks from the great state of Arizona. Congressman Franks, thank you for being on the show.
It's my sweet honor to be with you all.
Congressman Franks, you're the co-chair of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus in Washington, D.C. Tell our viewers a little bit about that caucus.
Well, the Israel Allies Caucus is a group of parliamentarians and members of Congress from really all over the world that are deeply committed to protecting and supporting the state of Israel. And I happen to have the privilege of chairing the one in the Congress, and that caucus is the only officially pro-Israel caucus on Capitol Hill. And we are just so committed to trying to protect Israel every way that we can. And I will just tell you, Josh, the evangelical Christians on Capitol Hill are the strongest supporters that Israel has in the entire Congress.
Well, you're here for the International Israel Allies Caucus Foundation's Chairman's Conference that took place last week. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about the conference?
Well, the conference went over many different things. It was able to make connections with a lot of the Israeli leaders and the Israeli people, and we were able to set a plan for the coming years for legislation. One of those pieces of legislation will be to see that America moves its embassy to Jerusalem, the undivided eternal capital of Israel, and we will also be doing bills that are designed to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear-armed nation. And these are very, very critical items, and I just hope so much that we have some success, and it will depend significantly on the outcome of the presidential election.
Well, the presidential election is just over a month away. We're seeing a huge divergence in the current administration, President Obama's viewpoint of Israel and Iran, and that of the challenger, Mitt Romney. Can you tell us a little about what is the differences in point of view on those issues?
Well, when it comes to issues related to Israel, I don't know how there could be a more stark contrast. Barack Obama has criticized Israel more for building homes in her own capital city than he has criticized Mahmoud Ahmadinejad for building nuclear weapons with which to threaten the entire free world. And it is very disappointing to me as an American congressman to see my president be so insulting to the most important and critical ally that America has on the planet. This is something, that Christians all over the world believe, as I do, that God has a sacred covenant with Israel, and that the peace and security of Israel portends the peace and security of people across the world. And America has been so blessed because we have blessed Israel. And it's a very great disappointment to me, and I believe a grave danger, when our national leadership in the Obama administration has stepped away from Israel like they have, calling the Prime Minister of Israel's comments just noise. And so it's a hard thing. I'm sure that sounds a little partisan, Josh, but it has the tragic disadvantage of being the truth.
Well, the question is, how would Mitt Romney tackle these issues differently, whether it be Iran or the issue of Jerusalem's capital of Israel?
Well, I believe one of the things that Mitt Romney would do would be to move the embassy of the United States to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, as it should have been done a long time ago. But I also believe that he would be very clear with Iran that they will not gain a nuclear arms capability. And that is a little different than just gaining nuclear arms. The capability gives them that ability to build nuclear arms very quickly. And we cannot let them get that far, because that enters into what Israel calls a zone of immunity. And it must not happen that way, because Israel's military capability and the United States capability in reaching places like Fordo are different. And Israel cannot trust this administration, the Obama administration, to protect them from Iran. They have to make sure that their security is in Israel's own hands. And I'm just hoping that after the election that we can see that equation change.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu at the United Nations made an impassioned speech to draw clear red lines. Yet the current administration says that they won't draw clear red lines on the issue of Iran. Why do you think they're so hesitant to make that statement, to make those lines, draw that line in the sand?
Well, it's a hard thing for me to say, but I just have to tell it like I believe it is. I serve on the Strategic Forces Committee, which is the Nuclear Arms Committee of the United States, and it deals with missile defense and a lot of other things. And I've concluded, sincerely, that this administration will allow Iran to become a nuclear-armed nation before they will intervene militarily, unless they see that it is a major political gain to them, like, for instance, close to this election. But I have to say to you that it frightens me to death, because if Iran gains nuclear weapons, we will need a new calendar. We will step into the shadow of nuclear terrorism as a world community. Israel will be 15 minutes from annihilation from Shahab-3 missiles from Iran, and terrorists the world over will gain these weapons from Iran. I just can't express in strongly enough terms how significant the danger would be of Iran gaining nuclear weapons.
Congressman Franks, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewers?
Well, I guess it's a sort of a compilation of what we've already said, Josh. This is a destiny year for America and for Israel and for the whole world. And America has been blessed beyond any nation on earth, and we've held certain truths to be self-evident that have been the first principles of everything that we believe in. And we are in great danger of losing all of that with 4 more years of Barack Obama. And I'm just being very direct. I pray that the American people will wake up this time and do what is necessary to make sure that we get a president that will support Israel and support the first principles of the United States and to somehow back up the dream of the Founding Fathers. And if we do that, I think there's hope, and I'm looking forward to that occurring.
Thank you, Congressman Franks, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
The great American university. For some, it's the route to riches. For others, a path to the endless party. But for many students, it's a time to broaden one's mind and begin to shape the world we live in. University has always been a crucible for social change and reform. And we see that today, students are standing up against the occupation of Tibet, the massacres in Darfur, and the war in Iraq. But there is one issue that seems to evoke more passion and hostility than any other.
I think the situation on campus generally is a deteriorating one.
This is for my grandfather.
The college campus is the battleground for and against Israel and Jewish interests around the country.
It isn't a joke. It's not just about people trying to say, here, look what's going on in the Gaza Strip. It's about taking the Middle East war and bringing it to campus in an intellectual framework that didn't really allow for freedom of speech.
We Palestinians have nothing to dialogue about with Zionists.
Very often, the more extreme efforts to discredit Israel on the college campus are nothing more than an outlet for good old-fashioned anti-Semitism in a new war.
I happen to like Natan Sharansky's definition of when it becomes anti-Semitic. He talks about the 3 Ds. If you delegitimize a country, if there's a double standard about that country, and if you demonize a country, that is anti-Semitic.
It's delegitimization of Israel, someone who claims that Israel doesn't exist, and for someone who claims that the entire country should be Palestine.
Israel really doesn't meet the requirements of a legitimate state.
Hey, hey! Thank you! Ho, ho! Thank you! Israel, we got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
If history is any indication, there'll be peace when you're gone and when we're in control again.
When you talk about dissolving the nation state or destructing the nation state, that is anti-Semitism, because at that point you no longer are talking about helpful critiques and criticism of how to improve that country, but how to get rid of that country. And no other nation state is held in that manner. But it's acceptable to talk about no longer having Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people.
Zionism must be destroyed. It must be gotten rid of. Every aspect of it.
You have a double standard where other countries are doing terrible things, human rights abuses, but only Israel, the finger points to only Israel, so that it's this double standard. And demonization. When Israel is accused of behaving like a demon, shooting children in the backs, that is anti-Semitic.
They stage in die-ins and they act as if they are Gazans who are being attacked by Israel. And this is in the middle of campus, so the average person walking by obviously sees it. And they don't always question it, so they automatically see Israel as the oppressor.
Recently, in a free newspaper on campus, we found cartoons that basically portrayed Israelis as Nazis in the full Nazi uniform, shooting at Palestinians in a trench. It's despicable, and it's terrible that this stuff's going on, and it really affects Jewish students. Jewish students see these things, and they think, where am I? What is this 1939 Germany? No, I mean, we're in 21st century universities. It's unbelievable.
Israel, Israel, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide!
The question is, how do you get people to hate Israel? And however they do that, however they can do it, they will do it.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the lost 10 tribes of Israel? This is a question that has challenged Bible scholars and historians for centuries. Now, the Bible does tell us that as the Assyrian Empire came against the northern 10 tribes some 2,700 years ago, that there were members of the northern tribes who heeded the warnings of the prophets, and they fled south to Jerusalem and to the kingdom of Judea. Others who were taken into exile came back with Ezra and Nehemiah and rejoined the Jewish mainstream. And so we can say with confidence that the Jewish people we have with us today contain significant remnants of all 12 tribes. Yet there were many from the northern 10 tribes who were indeed lost to history, and the search for them goes on to this day. Now, the body that has the final say in determining who truly has Jewish ancestry are the chief rabbis of Israel who sit here in the great synagogue in Jerusalem.
In the late 1970s, a few individuals from a small group located in northeast India began to research the origins of their religious traditions and their ancestry. Their research led them to discover an ancestral connection to Israel. Under Persian rule, their ancestors traveled through the Silk Route to modern-day Afghanistan, Tibet, China, and finally to northeast India, in the midst of Myanmar and Bangladesh. This particular group, called the B'nai Menashe, or Sons of Menashe, are believed to be descendants from the lost tribe of Manasseh. In the early 1980s, members of the group made contact with an organization in Israel expressing an interest in returning to their ancient homeland.
The chief rabbis have gone and investigated these people. They found that they still observe Shabbat. They still keep the kosher dietary laws. They still celebrate the biblical feasts. They still marry only within their tribe. And they still cling to the hope of returning one day to the land of Israel. Where does this hope come from? Well, the same Hebrew prophets who warned the ancient Israelites of the coming exile also left them with the hope of return. The prophet Isaiah, for instance, in chapter 43, says, "Fear not, for I am with you, and I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. I will bring your sons from afar, and your daughters from the ends of the earth." So when the prophet said, "I'll bring your descendants from the east," the Bnei Menashe clung to this hope for centuries, and the chief rabbis have now officially recognized them as having Israelite descent and approved their return to the land of Israel, and this is a modern-day miracle.
Many Bnei Menashe have already settled in Israel, and more are expected to come in September of 2012. The International Christian Embassy has pledged to sponsor the first flight of this new wave of Aliyah from India and hopes to sponsor more flights in the future.
The return of the Bnei Menashe, the sons of Menashe, to the land of Israel is one of the most exciting developments of our days. This is exactly what the Bible speaks about in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 3, where God says He will bring back from captivity the sons of Israel, the house of Judah, back to their land to possess it. And we want to invite you to become part of this exciting end-time prophetic action of God and to place a financial seed into God's return of the chosen people to the land of Israel. Become a partner of the Christian Embassy and help us to bring the Bnei Menashe, the sons of Menashe, back to the land of Israel. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.